2 more lectures in this series. That will be on the 5th, and the last will be on the 12th of June. To depend on any outside agency tends to confusion, sorrow, and fear. Body and soul may fail, but God, my strength is mine, my own forevermore. Psalm 72:26. Psalms of David, we see clearly how he had the knowledge, had the wisdom of the truth. Although, mind you, he could see all the things that were external to himself, and although he feared some of them, I don't say that David was complete, because if I read through his Psalms, I only find in many of them the truth. Many of them have no truth in them at all, which shows that David, of course, feared the external. But when he came to his senses, he realized that there was no fear in reality, that when reality took place, took its stand in the individual, or the individual became aware of himself, and that which was behind the self, then fear disappeared. We knew that there was neither death, nor sacrifice, nor anything else, or affliction of any kind could affect the life that was real within. Are we not continually perpetuating our illusion behind which we hide, while repeating the phrase, God is love, God is wisdom, God is truth, God is life? God can never be a reality to us while we hide behind our illusions. These are our illusions, our thoughts, our fears, our beliefs and tradition. And we hide behind these things, and we think that these things are real when they are not real at all. The only reality is God. And if we see and we think that these things external are real, then we have no power of the truth within us. It is only when we realize those illusions to be and what they are, then can we discern them properly and dissolve them. Only by understanding that which is not true can we arrive at that which is true. Are we not the expression of life itself, the expression of the living presence? Then we must refuse to let tradition, beliefs, creeds, nationalities, etc., which are the cause of our separation, limitation, and illusion, influence our thinking. If your thinking is influenced by the past, the future, by any particular belief or nationality, separation, any limitation of any kind, then you are hiding behind an illusion. And when you say God is love, God is wisdom, you do not know what you're saying at all. What you're saying is but words, where there is no meaning to them. If I can get you to see behind all these things, you will find that there is no such thing as good and bad in the infinite spirit. If you find then that there is sickness and health, then it is not in the infinite spirit. If you look at the opposites, then you will know that you are hiding behind an illusion. And the only thing to do is to dispose of the opposites. And when you dispose of them, you will find there is only a single unity in which no opposite exists. That is the only reality, and then you are not hiding behind your illusions. It is most difficult for many students to comprehend this truth because they're always living in the relative. But we must discern these things clearly. We must do our thinking free from tradition, free from beliefs and limitations, free from separation. Jesus knew himself to be one with God the Father, free from all limitation, and at the same time discerned the error that kept man in bondage. Thus he came to set man free, but man would not accept this freedom, this free gift from God. Now this freedom that Jesus was showing was not something in the future, but was ever present now. The future is but an image in the mind, and freedom in the future would always be an image and never a reality. If you think that by these lessons in the future that you're going to have this freedom, well, your freedom will never come because it's only an image, an idea, a belief that this freedom will come. But if you discern that this freedom is now and ever present, then you will dispose of your opposites immediately. You will discern them that they are a hindrance to the expression of that which is real. And then they will pass away, and you will know that this reality is now here and ever present. It is not your family, your church, your nationality, your belief, your tradition that keeps your heart beating. You have only to listen to your heart for a few moments to realize that it is life alone that is pulsating, making you alive, making you a living being. You may have due regard to your family, all that makes up your individual surroundings, that furnishes you with companionship, etc. But do not get your values confused. In my lecture last week, I quoted what Jesus said in Luke 14:26, Eastern text. He who comes to me and does not put aside his father and his mother, his brothers and his sisters, his wife and his children, and even his own life, he cannot be a disciple to me. Here we see then all this separation must be dissolved away, and therefore in each and every one of us the Christ dwells. Jesus was trying to show, get behind this separation, and there you will find the reality. That reality, it is ever present. Your father and mother, they will come and they will go. Your children will come and they will go. All these things will pass away. But the Christ that is in each and every one of us cannot pass away. It's the Spirit of God manifesting in humanity. Therefore I say, do not be caught up in the worship of the external, otherwise you'll be lost in illusion. We must steadfastly refuse to worship family, nation, tradition, church, or any idol, or any external representative of the Christhood, or any kind whatsoever. There cannot be any worship of anything external, otherwise you cannot be a disciple to me. Once you worship something, that which you worship destroys you. And you will see how clearly that is. You're living in the world of illusion. We must worship God in truth and reality, the Christ within. If we worship the external, we become slaves and are bound. Awareness, which is freedom, does not come, nor can it be induced from the outside, making you merely dependent upon some stimulation. No outside stimulation of any kind can bring this about. It is already here. It is now waiting patiently to take its place in you when you discern all that is hindering it. It is ever present. It is the only living reality, the only power that is, the only intelligence there is, and it is everywhere. There is nowhere where it is not. It is patiently waiting now all the time at this very moment. It is now waiting to give expression to itself through you. Immediately you make way for it in your own lives, in your own consciousness. All stimulation is similar in effect. Whether you take a drink, look at a picture, have ideas, whether you go to a concert, a religious ceremony, or work yourself up over an act, however noble or ignoble. Stimulation breeds dependence, and stimulation, whether worthy or unworthy, causes fear and apprehension and leads to illusion and not to the freedom of the truth. I told you the other night that it was in the silence, in the deep silence, that this truth, this reality, pierced your own consciousness. When your consciousness becomes stilled through discernment, I showed you how that true discernment could come. I showed you how everything should pass through your mind. All thoughts of any kind. If any thought rising to the surface of your own consciousness becomes an emotional effect upon you, then you are controlled by it. If any thought rises to the consciousness and you become afraid of it, then you are controlled by it. You can never be free under those circumstances. But as these thoughts, events, and things, and conditions, no matter what they may be, cross your consciousness, look at them in an impersonal way, neither judging nor condemning. Do not halt them in your mind in any way whatsoever, but look at them in such a way as you are freed from them, that pass away as a flock of birds cross the windless sky. They come, they go, leave no trace. But if you're caught up in the emotion of any thought, or any feeling, or any act, or anything whatsoever, then you are controlled and you do not know the truth. That is freedom itself. The truth is freedom. The truth is not affected by any of these things. And when you have the truth established in you, then there is no fear of anything whatsoever. Jesus showed you clearly on his way to the cross, all he did and said, and in his resurrection, showed definitely that he had no fear of any external thing, but it could not destroy the truth in him, or the life of God in him, which was the only reality. Organized religions, politics, cults, nationalities become fetters which bind individuals into groups, who become fiendish in their beliefs, which create strife and misery, the wolf in sheep's clothing. All this is but a distraction from reality. Thus thought feeling wanders away from the truth of the one in all and all in one. We see today how the two great ideologies that exist, one is democracy and the other is communism. And we see all the nations on one side have amalgamated themselves, and the other nations have amalgamated themselves on the other side. when one time you look back, in the 45 we saw the clans fighting one another. These things were simple. But now it comes to two great divisions of humanity. And what are they built upon? Both are built upon a philosophy and not upon truth. Therefore, that which is not true will destroy itself. It cannot help itself. Only that which is truth in itself can stand forever. And when the human family is built upon truth, there'll be no division. There'll be no two separate ideologies. There'll be nothing built upon a philosophy of any kind. There'll be nothing built upon a religion which separates man from man. There will only be one true, absolute religion, which be that which Jesus showed clearly, the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. Anything else is political, philosophical, or ideological. These things must destroy themselves, and in their destruction, naturally, many will be destroyed with them. At the present time, we see the carnage of human flesh taking place in Korea. I'll guarantee you this, that the masses who are fighting there know nothing at all about what they're fighting about. You ask the Chinese what he's fighting about, he rubs his shoulder and he says he doesn't know. You ask an American what he's fighting for, and he says, for America, of course, you see? Or for the philosophy, of course, he doesn't know what he's fighting for. We're all fighting because there is differences. A difference either in religion, a difference in philosophy, a difference in ideology. If these things are the cause of humanity being separated and destroyed, the destruction of them must come. There's no other way. It has become very difficult for many to withdraw from all distractions for the simple reason that most people cannot think purely. We only think with the background of separation, beliefs, and limitations, whether they be religious, political, or nationalistic. These cause the mind to become warped, narrow, and bigoted. So conflict arises which further distracts our thought feeling. And immediately conflict arises, our thought feeling is distracted once more, and we are led into the whirlpool of destruction. It is only through constant awareness that thought feeling is able to extricate itself from the net of distraction. If we rely on others to give us cheer, hope, and courage, however noble they may be, we become lost in dependence. You can depend on nothing except but the Christ within. If you depend on anything else, then you are lost. You are bound. There is no freedom. Nature shows what should be. When a bird lays its eggs, it continually sits upon these eggs until its young is matured. When the young is in the nest, birds come and put the material into their mouths, and they are fed. But immediately the bird begins to become a part, individualized itself. Then it is pushed out of the nest, and it begins to fly around, gets its own wings. That is what should happen to every individual in the whole universe. They must find their own wings. Their own wings is the Christ within, no other source whatsoever. We find other groups in opposition to our own, and thus endless struggle and pain is of no avail. Cheer and happiness are not ends in themselves. We must search for that which is an end in itself. In this only we will find happiness. The journey towards this end lies within oneself. Every other way is a distraction leading to ignorance and illusion. It is not how to solve conflict and sorrow that must be sought. This leads to frustration. But if we journey on, being constantly aware of what is taking place about us, discerning that which is preventing true expression of the life that is one, then our journey will be a revealing process, an experience which is constantly liberating and creative. We push aside all these things through discernment. And we learn also that as we are doing so, there is something that is doing it. But even if we find ourselves separate and distinct from another, we have lost ourselves in that distinction. There must come an awareness through your discernment that leads to the complete realization of that which in itself is the only living existing thing upon the whole universe, existing in you as the livingness that enables your heart to beat. That is the life that gives you consciousness. And without this life consciousness, you can neither think. But with this life consciousness, you think good, bad, or indifferent. That is the thing you must see. That in this consciousness itself is the power to think, to give vent to bad and good, ill health or health, whatever the case may be. Yet when you go away from it, you find yourselves in division. You find yourselves in opposites. But as you retrace your step, your journey through the self, you find then the self, the creator of these things and divisions. And behind the self you become aware of something, that which is unfathomable, that thing that you cannot discern, that thing that is indescribable, yet is the only living thing. I am aware only. I do not know what it is, but I know that it is. Reality comes when the mind-heart is still. What we crave for is not reality. Reality is that ever-present presence. And in this presence, all division, all distinction dissolve away. The question is, do you want to be free? This is the point, and a very serious question it is too. You want to be free? No. The majority of people want to depend upon others. They have grown up in this dependence. They do not want to be free from the things that they want that surrounds them. They're always within themselves a sense of lack. That sense of lack is creating frustration and disturbance in the mind, and eventually leads to a breakdown. Don't you see then it is so essential to understand these words of mine? Do you want to be free? If so, then the ever-present presence alone is freedom, nothing else. And to be aware of this, the mind must be stripped of all illusion, all dependence upon tradition, belief, or anything else external to itself. There must be nothing but the Christ. And in the Christ there is all things. Everything is in God. All that is mine is thine. All that is thine is mine. Here there is no lack. There is no dependence, because there is awareness of the life itself that is giving birth to itself every moment. Every moment is giving birth to itself through you in its wholeness and completeness. To experience this freedom, we must not depend on any authority, any organization, or any individual, for dependence on any kind creates uncertainty and fear, thus preventing the experiencing of the real. In the outer world there is no creative understanding, no hope. There is only separation, conflict, and sorrow, bloodshed and confusion. Only through self-knowledge, which leads to awareness of that which is beyond the self, comes the calm, undisturbed, serene composure of assurance that is not dependent. In the silence you become aware of the events of life, and as you watch you become conscious of the inner. When the inner is understood, the outer becomes clear. The outer, you will realize, has no significance of itself. The inner must be able to stand alone and see the outer with its cunning deceits, and withstand its elusiveness, its deceptions, its unrealness, in which so many are drowned. It is common to hear people rebel against the conditions in the world in which they live, but they have never thought that the cause of these conditions arise from within themselves. So ignorant of the cause, they accept their condition, and public opinion rules their thought feeling. This is truly ignorance. So they follow a particular belief, and they look for anything that may confirm their belief. But if anything arises contrary to their belief, they reject it without question. So they squirm and wriggle without thinking, and their ignorance still remains. Yes, when there is fixed concepts in the mind, they are difficult to move, and they prevent thinking. They're a barrier to true thinking. Talk to a person who has got fixed ideas, which is truly ignorance, and you'll see how they squirm and wriggle and so forth, because their so-called lovely concepts, whatever the case may be, are being challenged. I say challenge everything, no matter what it is. Everything. That's the only way you can think. That's the only way that leads to freedom. To accept anything is of no value to you. Acceptance is imitation. Imitation leads to illusion. and confusion. Your mind becomes a pit in which you are drowned. This brings us to the parable of the kingdom of heaven given by the Master in Matthew 21:16. The realm of heaven is like a householder who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. And after agreeing with the laborers to pay them a shilling a day, he sent them into his vineyard. Then on going out at 9 o'clock, he noticed some other laborers standing in the marketplace doing nothing. To them he said, "You go into the vineyard too, and I will give you whatever wage is fair." So they went in. Going out again at 12 o'clock, and at 3 o'clock he did the same thing. And when he went out at 5 o'clock, he came upon some others who were standing and said to them, "Why have you stood doing nothing all day?" "Because nobody hired us," they said. He told them, "Go into the vineyard too." When evening came, the master of the vineyard said to his bailiff, "Summons the laborers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last and going on to the first." And when those who had been hired about 5 o'clock came, they got a shilling each. So when the first laborers came up, they supposed they would get more, but they too got each their shilling. And on getting it, they grumbled at the householder. "These last," they said, "have only worked a single hour, yet you have ranked them equal with us, who have borne the brunt of the day's work and the heat." Then he replied to one of them, "My men, I am not wronging you. Did you not agree with me for a shilling? Take what belongs to you and be off. I choose to give this last man the same as you. Can I not do as I please with what belongs to me? Have you a grudge because I am generous? So shall the last be first, and the first be last." Here the Master shows again that there is no distinction with those who enter the kingdom of heaven. They are all alike, the first and the last and the last and the first. And there can be no separation. There is therefore no distinction. The Father gives generously even to the last, because they are all equal in the kingdom of God, because it is God himself who is manifesting himself in each and every one of us. Therefore, that manifestation is equal. And Jesus was showing that which is behind mankind, that which is real. And when we know the truth, we can read what he means. And only those who know the truth can understand the Master's words. Clouded in parables, yet behind those parables you know the truth. All are in the kingdom now, and even the last to realize it is just as good as the first. They were there all the time, only the majority do not know it. You are living in the infinite now. The infinite being infinite, there can be no outside him. The infinite being infinite, there can be no other life but his. The infinite being infinite, there can be no other expression of life but his life. The infinite being infinite, there can be no substance, consciousness of any kind except his. Therefore you are in now. So the last and the first are the same. He who realizes it now, and he who realizes it afterwards as both the same. In verse 15, Old Version, it says, Is thine eye evil because I am good? How many are envious of another? In Mark 10:35 and in Matthew 20:20, there is a somewhat similar request. In Mark 10:35, it states that James and John, the sons of Zebedee, made the request. In Matthew, it says that the mother of the sons of Zebedee made the request. She was one of the ministering women who helped support Jesus and his disciples. The narrative in Mark is probably the correct one, so I will insert it here. Mark 10:35 to 45. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came up to him saying, Teacher, we want you to do whatsoever we ask you. So he said, What do you want me to do for you? And they said to him, Give us seats, one on your right hand and one on your left hand, in your glory. Jesus said, You do not know what you are asking. Can you drink the cup I have to drink? Or undergo the baptism I have to undergo? And they said to him, We can. Jesus said, You shall drink the cup that I have to drink, and undergo the baptism I have to undergo, knowing perfectly well that whatever they ask, so shall they receive. But in the great thing, what Jesus saw, he could not give them the right and left hand side in his glory. That alone belonged to the infinite God who is expressing himself in each and every one of us. Because there is no separation in God. In our awareness of the truth of the oneness, the living God, and where there is no separation, in this awareness enables you then to become aware more and more. That is the glory. But it is not for me to grant seats on my right hand and my left hand. These belong to the men for whom they have been destined. When the 10 heard of this, they burst into indignation at James and John. So Jesus called them and said, You know that the so-called rules of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great men overbear them. Not so with you. Whosoever wants to be the great man among you must be your servant. And whoever of you wants to be first must be the slave of all. For the Son of Man himself has not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as ransom for many. Here we see the great truth that can be no personal influence or earthly, regal, or riches potentate can have an honored place. The only qualification is love and service. And even those who imagine that they have an honored place because they may be a king or a queen or a bishop or a pope, we give these names on earth. But it is the quality of love, the unity, not intellect, that is honored in heaven, where there is no distinction. There is a story of a man who passed into heaven and learned all that could be known. Then he was asked, What more do you want to know? And he answered, Now I want to know God. And the great one said, Know nothing and you will know God. You cannot find God in intellectualism or knowledge of things or knowledge of the external. But immediately the mind ceases to become a battleground of opposites. There is the truth. God is found. So they were indignant because the master would not promise them the right and the left places of honor. Then he says, the one who waits upon you, who serves, he is the greater, the servant of all. Who is the greater within you? Who serves every one of us? God, Christ. Christ serves every one of us. He is service and love. Christ does not come to be served, but to serve. Christ in you is love and service. Think for a moment. Whenever you feel the most blessed feeling in your life, you feel love rushing through you and a feeling of service. You lose yourself entirely. Self is gone. There is nothing but love and service. That is the greater one that Jesus was thinking about. The greater one, the greatest of all, was he who did this for us. Christ has not come to be served, but to serve, even to give his life for many. This does not mean that he would lose his life, but is able to take it up again and show mankind that eternal life exists in man as it does in God. The Father has life in himself, so he grants the Son to have the same life in himself. These are the Master's words. What we see in this relative world of ours is a scramble between individuals, between classes and social life, between nations in the glorious game of murder, a righteous war with the best modern appliances to slaughter people by the thousands in the name of peace and freedom. I come in peace, in love to serve. Therefore, what prevents man today from entering into rest is the same cause that produced the same effect in the time of the Master. They could not enter in because of their unbelief, and they limited the Holy One of Israel. They could not enter in because they could not see the Holy One that was in all and was the only foundation for peace and freedom. Unless this is understood, strife will remain. We are still looking at conditions as the cause of our misery, when all the time the cause is in our own mental attitude to those conditions. If we would only look to the first cause, the creative power within that is beyond all creation, and acts independent of any conditions, we will see that the Master is leading us into the understanding that we are made in the image and likeness of God. Therefore, this creative principle is so wonderful that no matter what any conditions exist now, at this very moment, they are surpassed, left alone because they are illusions, and into this creative principle, irrespective of what conditions exist. At this very moment, Jesus said, yes, you'll be as white as snow. This very day you shall be with me in paradise, in the kingdom of the Christ. And therefore, can never separate himself from the inherent creative power, and for this reason the Master shows us the limitless goodness of our Heavenly Father. Be ye perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect, as the mode for our own use, so that we can free ourselves from all strife and misery. He maketh the sun to rise on the evil and the good. He sendeth the rain on the just and the unjust. In other words, the Father is not concerned with existing or pre-existing conditions created by men, but constantly radiates forth his creative love, so that good and evil will in themselves dissolve away, being relative terms in the world of man's own creation. Therefore, when we use the same creative power in the same manner as the Father himself, we will produce the effects of life and not of death. We cannot divest ourselves of the creative power, and the Master shows us the way. It is for us to choose, and according to the way we employ our creative power, so will it be unto us. As each condition is created from within and not from without, we begin to see the force of the Master's invitation. Come unto me, all ye that labor and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. When we realize the true nature of the divine and the laws pertaining to the divine, we see in the Master's teachings that the creative power within is the power behind any thought that we may hold. And according to what is in our mind heart, so will our thought feeling be. The cause and effect, which continues through every link of the chain of existing conditions. So we see that the existing conditions are the result of our own cause. The self is the cause of conditions. And unless we discern the way of the self, we shall never be free. Therefore, if the originating thought be in accordance with the divine law of love and unity, the absolute goodness in itself of the intended creation of the Father will be inherent in the thing immediately created, and will also follow in the whole series of results following from it, irrespective of any present condition that may exist. So in this complete understanding of love and unity, which is the intended creation of the Father, and when we become one with Him, we will see that the things created will also follow in a whole series of results following from it, irrespective of any condition that exists at this very moment. Therefore I say, clearly and distinctly to you, when we all know the truth, love and unity of the one in all, everything becomes well overnight. Isaiah 1:2, let desert and dry land be glad, let steepies rejoice and flower, flowering like narcissus blooms and ringing with delight, sharing Lebanon's lavish growth, Sharon and Carmel's splendor, and seeing thus the Eternal's living power, the splendor of our God. Let everyone therefore take part joyfully in building the temple of the living God, to the glory of the Father and the brotherhood of mankind. Benediction. Blessed Teacher of all souls, thou didst bid us to seek deep in the recess of our being to find the pearl of great price. Beliefs in which we thought we could find inspiration, we found were chaff before the winds of fear and doubt. But as we spread our wings of love beyond these boundaries of separation, thou didst leap into our hearts with joy. Still teach us, blessed Teacher, for we still need the guidance of the Christ within, the Good Shepherd that keeps the fold complete. O beloved Teacher of mine. Here we see the benediction brings us to that teacher that is always within, showing the way. When Jesus said these words, I of mine own self am nothing, is the Spirit of the Father within me that doeth the work. That then leads us to the teacher within ourselves. Can we then dissolve the self away, understand its ways, and as we begin to understand its ways of selfishness, going away from the infinite, self goes out into these barren lands of fear, doubt, and lack, because it does not know itself. But when it knows that it is the expression of that which is behind it, and that which is behind the self gives rise to our thought and feeling. When we discern all these things, then we see the oneness, the beauty of that which alone is complete, with everything, and where there is no lack, no doubt, no fear, no death, it in itself is complete from the beginning. The Word that was with God, and the Word that was God, and the Word that was made flesh. The Word that was made flesh is immortal. In this lies that you find within yourselves, not outside yourselves from any particular form, creed, tradition, or book. Search ye the Scriptures and you think you have found eternal life, you make a mistake. From no book can you find. But as the mind clears a path through the forest of doubt, fear, and lack, there it leads to the light that shines eternally. And as we go towards that light, we find if we eventually become the light, and the light that shines, the darkness comprehends it not. This is the light of the world. This is my peace that I have given to you. My peace that you made. My blessing will remain with you.